The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the quiet energy of 1,000 different life forms, each representing civilizations that had thrived among the stars for millennia. Ancient beings floated in crystalline pods, their thoughts transmitted through neural networks that spanned light years. Insectoid delegates clicked and chittered in harmonious frequencies, while gaseous entities shifted through spectrum analyzers that translated their chemical communications into understandable concepts. At the center of this magnificent assembly sat the Elders, beings so old that their origins had become legend. The Vorthak, whose silicon-based consciousness had witnessed the birth and death of entire solar systems. The Ethereal Collective, energy beings who had transcended physical form eons ago. The Ancient Ones of Kepler, 442b, whose crystalline structures held memories dating back to when the galaxy was young and wild. Today's session carried unusual weight. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Elders had called for an emergency gathering to discuss a single species. A young race that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, barely crawling out of their single-star system. Humans. Elder Vorthak's voice resonated through the chamber like grinding mountains, each word carefully measured and heavy with authority. Fellow beings of the Council, we gather today to issue a formal warning regarding the species known as Homo sapiens, inhabitants of the third planet orbiting the star they call Sol. A ripple of curiosity swept through the assembly. The Zephyrian delegation, tall and graceful with their translucent blue skin, exchanged glances of confusion. Commander Zethkar of the militant Korgan Empire leaned forward in his war throne, his scarred face showing obvious skepticism. Why would the Elders concern themselves with such a primitive race? The Ethereal Collective's spokesman materialized as a shimmering humanoid outline, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Honored Elder, these humans have barely achieved Level 2 civilization status. Their technology is crude, their society fractured by countless internal conflicts. What threat could they possibly pose to established galactic powers? Elder Vorthak's ancient eyes, like twin galaxies spinning in the void, focused on the ethereal. Threat assessment is not always about current capabilities, young one. Sometimes it is about recognizing patterns that span across evolutionary time. We have observed this species for the equivalent of 2 of their millennia. What we have witnessed defies conventional understanding of biological and social development. The chamber fell silent. When the Elders spoke of defying conventional understanding, even the most arrogant species listened. Humans, continued the Ancient One of Kepler, 442b, its crystalline form shifting through prismatic colors, possess a combination of traits that we have never encountered in a single species. They are simultaneously the most cooperative and most competitive beings we have documented. They form bonds of loyalty that transcend logic, yet they wage wars of unprecedented brutality. They are capable of breathtaking acts of creation and devastating acts of destruction, often within the same individual. Commander Zethkar's laugh boomed through the chamber, his tusked jaw splitting in what his species considered amusement. With respect, Ancient Ones, this sounds like the description of every primitive species before they achieve galactic maturity. The Korgan Empire itself went through such phases. We grew beyond our savage nature through conquest and discipline. Did you? Elder Vorthak's question hung in the air like a challenge. Tell us, Commander, how did your species respond when faced with extinction during the synthesis wars 5 centuries ago? Zethkar's expression darkened. We fought with honor until victory was achieved. We adapted our strategies, improved our technology, and emerged stronger. Indeed, you adapted within the parameters of your nature. You became more efficient warriors, better strategists, more disciplined soldiers. But you remain fundamentally the same species with the same behavioral patterns. The Elder's tone carried no judgment, merely observation. Humans do not follow such predictable paths. The Ethereal Collective's representative flickered with what might have been impatience. Forgive us, but we fail to see the significance. All species adapt to survive. Elder Vorthak gestured to the great viewing screen that dominated one wall of the chamber. Images began to flow across its surface, scenes from Earth's history captured by long-range observation probes. Observe and learn why we issue this warning. The first images showed early human civilizations. Primitive by galactic standards, but the delegates could see the patterns immediately. Cooperation on scales that seemed impossible for such an individualistic species. Massive construction projects that required coordination across generations. Art and culture that served no apparent survival function, yet consumed enormous resources. Note the anomaly, the Ancient One pointed out. Most species develop either collective consciousness or individual excellence. Humans somehow maintain both simultaneously. They will sacrifice themselves for strangers while simultaneously competing against their own family members. This paradox should create societal collapse. Instead, it accelerates their development. The images shifted to more recent history. Wars of terrible scope and devastation, yes, but also moments of stunning cooperation. Species working together to face common threats, sharing resources across traditional boundaries, developing technologies purely to help others. Commander Zethkar studied the images with growing interest. Their military tactics are unconventional. They seem to embrace strategies that should result in mutual destruction, yet somehow achieve victory. Precisely, Elder Vorthak confirmed. Observe this recording from what they call World War II. The screen displayed aerial footage of a human military operation. Small aircraft, laughably primitive by galactic standards, diving directly into heavily defended positions with no apparent plan for survival. The delegates watched in stunned silence as human pilots deliberately crashed their planes into enemy targets, trading their lives for tactical advantage. Suicide attacks, the ethereal collective's representative observed. Several species have employed such tactics during desperate circumstances. Watch more closely, the Ancient One advised. Additional footage showed the aftermath. Instead of celebrating these sacrificial attacks, human military leadership was developing new strategies to achieve the same tactical goals without requiring such sacrifices. Engineers worked frantically to design better armor, improve tactics, alternative weapons, all to preserve the lives of their own people. They simultaneously value individual life above all else and readily sacrifice it for abstract principles, Elder Vorthak explained. This creates a psychological profile that has never been documented in any other species. They fight as if they are immortal while knowing they are mortal. They plan for futures they will never see while focusing intensely on immediate survival. The images continued. Humans rebuilding cities destroyed by their own weapons. Former enemies becoming allies within decades. Technological development that leaped forward in impossible spurts, driven not by necessity alone, but by curiosity and competition. Here is what troubles us most, the Ancient One said, highlighting a series of more recent developments. They have achieved nuclear capability and used it in warfare. Standard galactic psychology predicts that any species reaching this milestone will either destroy itself within 2 generations or develop strict social controls that eliminate their aggressive tendencies. The delegates murmured agreement. This was established science, verified across thousands of species. Humans have maintained nuclear capability for nearly a century of their time, Elder Vorthak continued. They have not destroyed themselves. Neither have they eliminated their aggressive nature. Instead, they have learned to channel it in new directions while simultaneously developing unprecedented international cooperation protocols. Commander Zethkar was studying the data feeds with professional interest. Their military development is accelerating beyond normal curves. But their scientific advancement in non-military fields is even faster. How is this possible? Because they treat everything as both competition and collaboration simultaneously, the ethereal collective's representative said, beginning to understand. They compete to cooperate better than their neighbors. Exactly. And now observe their response to their first confirmed contact with non-terrestrial intelligence. The screen showed recent footage from the edge of human space. A Bendari research vessel, one of the galaxy's most peaceful and scientifically advanced species, had encountered a human exploration ship. The Bendari, following standard first contact protocols, had transmitted mathematical concepts and peaceful greetings. The human response had been swift and completely unprecedented. Within hours, human ships began appearing throughout their local space group. Not warships, but vessels carrying linguists, scientists, philosophers, and artists. They had somehow mobilized their entire civilization's intellectual resources in the time it typically took other species to form a committee to discuss the implications. The Bendari captain's report was most illuminating, Elder Vorthak noted. He described humans as terrifyingly eager to learn everything immediately. They asked 10,000 questions for everyone they answered. They wanted to know not just how Bendari technology worked, but why it was developed, what cultural factors influenced its design, what philosophical frameworks guided its implementation. Standard curiosity behavior, the ethereal representative suggested, though with less confidence than before. The Bendari captain also noted that while some humans were asking about technology and culture, others were simultaneously calculating the military applications of everything they learned, not for hostility, but from what appeared to be reflexive threat assessment. They were genuinely excited about peaceful contact while instinctively preparing for potential conflict. The implications rippled through the chamber. Species preparing for war during first contact was normal. Species preparing for peace was also normal. Species doing both with equal intensity and sincerity was unprecedented. Commander Zethkar's tactical mind was already working through possibilities. If they apply this paradoxical thinking to military development, they will become unpredictable opponents, Elder Vorthak confirmed. They will develop strategies that no existing military doctrine can counter because their strategies will violate the fundamental assumptions upon which all military doctrine is based. The Ancient One's crystalline form pulsed with deeper colors. But the military threat is not our primary concern. Observe their scientific development since first contact. New images flooded the screen. In the months since meeting the Bendari, human scientific advancement had accelerated to impossible levels. They were not simply copying alien technology, they were understanding its underlying principles and improving upon it. Technologies that had taken the Bendari centuries to develop were being refined and enhanced by humans within weeks. They learn like a collective consciousness, but innovate like individualists, the Ancient One explained. Each human scientist builds upon the work of thousands of others, while simultaneously competing to exceed all previous achievements. The result is exponential advancement that should be theoretically impossible. The ethereal collective's representative was now visibly agitated, its form flickering rapidly. This suggests they could achieve technological parity with established galactic powers within decades rather than millennia. Optimistic, Elder Vorthak corrected. Our projections suggest they will achieve technological superiority within decades. They will not be content with parity. A new voice entered the discussion. Ambassador Kix of the Hegemony, a trade federation that controlled commerce across 17 sectors, had remained silent until now. Surely their political fragmentation will limit their effectiveness. Our intelligence indicates they maintain over 200 separate governmental entities on their home world alone. Elder Vorthak's attention turned to the insectoid ambassador. You have been monitoring human political development? Of course. Any species achieving FTL capability becomes a potential trade partner or economic threat. We maintain standard observation protocols. And what have you observed? Ambassador Kix's mandibles clicked nervously. Anomalies. Their political fragmentation appears to be voluntary. They maintain separation while increasing coordination. Trade between their political entities has increased by 3,000% since first contact, but their military preparations have also accelerated. They are becoming simultaneously more unified and more competitive. The chamber was growing restless. Several smaller delegations were transmitting rapid communications back to their home governments. The implications of this discussion were becoming clear. Elder Vorthak raised a crystalline appendage for attention. We have shared this information to provide context for our warning. Humans represent a fundamental disruption to galactic stability, not because they are evil or inherently aggressive, but because they operate according to psychological and social principles that make their behavior impossible to predict using conventional models. Commander Zethkar stood, his massive frame imposing even in the diverse assembly. Are the elders suggesting that humans pose a threat to the Korgan Empire? We are suggesting, the Ancient One replied, that humans pose a threat to predictability itself. Every species in this chamber has achieved stability through understanding the rules that govern galactic civilization. Humans do not follow these rules. They acknowledge them, understand them, and then innovate beyond them. The ethereal collective's representative materialized more solidly, indicating serious attention. What specific warnings do the elders wish to issue? Elder Vorthack's ancient gaze swept across the chamber. Do not underestimate them because of their current technological limitations. Do not assume their political fragmentation indicates weakness. Do not believe their peaceful overtures guarantee peaceful intentions. Do not mistake their curiosity for naivety. Most importantly, the Ancient One added, do not provoke them. Humans respond to provocation in ways that defy rational calculation. They escalate conflicts beyond logical parameters. They pursue vengeance across timescales that exceed their individual lifespans. They treat personal slights as species-wide insults and respond accordingly. Commander Zethkar's scarred face showed thoughtful consideration. The elders speak as if they have witnessed human responses to provocation. We have observed their history, Elder Vorthack confirmed. We have seen how they respond when threatened, insulted, or attacked. We have seen individuals sacrifice themselves to ensure their entire species remembers a grievance. We have seen them pursue justice across generations, never forgetting, never forgiving, until satisfaction is achieved. Furthermore, the Ancient One continued, they do not distinguish between individual and collective insults. Harm one human, and you potentially create an enemy of their entire species. They form emotional bonds that transcend rational self-interest. The warning was clear, but Ambassador Kix voiced what many were thinking. Surely the elders overstate the case. They are one species among thousands in the galaxy. Their current capabilities are negligible. Elder Vorthack's response carried the weight of cosmic time. Young Ambassador, we have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across millions of years. We have seen species that seemed destined for greatness fade into obscurity. We have seen primitive cultures evolve to dominate entire sectors of space. We have learned to recognize the signs of truly dangerous potential. Humans, the Ancient One concluded, display all the signs of species that will either unite the galaxy in unprecedented cooperation or burn it down in pursuit of victory. There is no middle ground with such beings. The chamber fell into contemplative silence. Each delegation was processing the implications, calculating how this information would affect their civilization's long-term planning. The elders had spoken, and their warnings carried the authority of eons. But in the back of the assembly, in a section reserved for minor powers and recent additions to the galactic community, Prince Vexthor of the Crimson Dominion listened with growing anger rather than concern. His people were proud warriors who had carved their empire from the bones of lesser species. The idea that some primitive mammals could pose a threat to established galactic powers was not just ridiculous. It was insulting. As the formal session concluded and delegates began filing out to consult with their governments, Prince Vexthor was already planning how to prove the elders wrong. The Crimson Dominion would not be intimidated by warnings about glorified apes who had barely learned to leave their home system. It would be the last mistake his empire would ever make. Prince Vexthor stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the crimson nebula that gave his empire its name swirl around distant stars. The ship itself was a testament to Dominion military engineering. 3 kilometers of hardened battle steel, armed with plasma cannons that could crack planets, and shielded by energy barriers that had never been breached in 2 centuries of warfare. Behind him, his war council assembled in the traditional formation. General Korth Van, scarred veteran of a dozen successful campaigns, stood at rigid attention. Admiral Yexna, whose tactical brilliance had secured victory against the hegemony border worlds, waited with barely concealed eagerness. High Commander Zulmor, the Dominion's most decorated soldier, maintained the stoic expression that had intimidated enemies across 3 sectors. My lords, Prince Vexthor began, his voice carrying the authority of generations of conquest. We have heard the elders' warning about these humans. I summoned you here to discuss our response. General Korthvan was the first to speak, his gravelly voice reflecting decades of battlefield commands. My prince, the elders' concerns seem overblown. Our intelligence reports confirm the human military capability is primitive at best. They use projectile weapons, chemical explosives, and crude armor. Their largest warships are smaller than our escort vessels. Admiral Yexna stepped forward, her tactical displays activating holographic representations of human space. I have analyzed their defensive positions throughout their local systems. Their force deployment shows no understanding of 3-dimensional warfare. They cluster their defenses around planetary bodies and major shipping lanes, leaving vast gaps that any competent military force could exploit. High Commander Zulmore nodded gravely. Our forward scouts report that human colonies are virtually undefended. They rely on communication networks to coordinate responses, but these networks are vulnerable to standard disruption tactics. A single strike force could cripple their ability to mount organized resistance. Prince Vexthor studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human star systems looked pathetically weak compared to the fortified strongholds that protected Dominion space. And yet the elders warn us not to provoke them. They speak of unpredictable responses and dangerous potential. With respect, my prince, General Korthvan growled, the elders have grown cautious in their ancient age. They see threats where none exist because they have forgotten what true military power looks like. When did the Vorthak last engage in meaningful warfare? When did the ethereal collective face a real challenge to their authority? Admiral Yexna activated additional displays showing Dominion military assets. Fleets of warships that could devastate star systems. Ground forces equipped with personal energy shields and plasma weaponry. Orbital bombardment platforms capable of rendering worlds uninhabitable. My prince, our military strength exceeds that of the humans by several orders of magnitude. If they pose any threat to galactic stability, we have both the capability and the responsibility to neutralize that threat before it develops. High Commander Zulmore's scarred features showed approval. The Dominion has always served as the galaxy's sword. When the hegemony grew too aggressive, we contained them. When the Silicon Confederacy threatened shipping lanes, we pacified them. When the machine minds attempted their expansion, we demonstrated the superiority of organic military thinking. This is simply another situation requiring Dominion intervention. Prince Vexthor turned back to the observation windows, contemplating the swirling nebula that had hidden his ancestors when they first began their campaign of galactic conquest. The Crimson Dominion had built its empire through decisive action, not cautious deliberation. His grandfather had unified 12-star systems through military genius. His father had expanded Dominion influence across 3 sectors through strategic warfare. Now it fell to him to address the next potential threat to galactic order. The elders speak of human unpredictability, he mused. But unpredictability is simply another word for lack of proper military discipline. Any species can be unpredictable when they act irrationally. True strength comes from predictable, overwhelming force applied with perfect timing. General Korthvan's smile was predatory. Shall I begin planning a demonstration, my prince? A limited engagement to test their capabilities and resolve? Nothing that violates galactic law, but enough to gauge their true military potential. What do you suggest? Admiral Yexna stepped forward with obvious enthusiasm. Human expansion has been tentative and cautious. They have established several small colonies on the periphery of their local systems, but these outposts are barely defended. A simple show of force, perhaps demanding tribute for passage through what we could claim as Dominion space, would reveal their true nature. High Commander Zulmore consulted his tactical displays. The colony they call New Geneva would be ideal for such a demonstration. It is far enough from their home system that response would be delayed, but significant enough that they cannot ignore the challenge. Approximately 50,000 humans, engaged primarily in agricultural development and resource extraction. Prince Vexthor considered the proposal. It had merit from several perspectives. If the humans responded with appropriate submission, it would prove the elders' warnings were unfounded and establish Dominion authority over human expansion. If they responded with resistance, it would provide valuable intelligence about their military capabilities while demonstrating the consequences of challenging established galactic powers. What resistance should we expect? He asked. General Korthvan consulted intelligence reports. Minimal. The colony maintains a small security force armed with projectile weapons and basic armor. Their orbital defenses consist of 3 patrol craft that our scouts classify as armed merchant vessels rather than true warships. Total military personnel, approximately 200 individuals. 200, Admiral Yexnar repeated with obvious contempt. My prince, a single Dominion assault squad, could neutralize their entire defensive force within hours. This will barely qualify as military exercise. High Commander Zulmore raised a cautioning hand. We should not underestimate any opponent completely. But our analysis suggests that human military doctrine relies heavily on fixed defensive positions and conventional tactics. They show no evidence of understanding advanced warfare concepts like dimensional shifting, quantum disruption, or psionic assault. Prince Vexthor made his decision. Very well, General Korthvan, you will lead a force to New Geneva. Your mission is to demand tribute and establish Dominion authority over that system. Use only enough force to overcome resistance and ensure compliance. And if they refuse to pay tribute, Admiral Yexna asked, then you will demonstrate why refusal is unwise, the prince replied coldly. But avoid unnecessary destruction. We want to establish our authority, not create martyrs or galactic incidents. General Korthban Buafurmadi. It will be my honor, my prince. What level of force do you authorize? Take the Iron Vengeance and 2 escort vessels. That should provide overwhelming superiority without appearing unnecessarily aggressive. Make it clear that this is merely a demonstration of Dominion power, not a declaration of war. High Commander Zulmor's tactical mind was already working through operational details. Shall we coordinate with other Dominion forces in the region? Standard protocol suggests having reinforcements within striking distance. No, Prince Vexthor decided. We want this to appear as routine enforcement rather than military preparation. 3 ships should be more than adequate to handle any human response. Admiral Yexna was studying the deployment routes. My prince, should we inform the Galactic Council of our intentions? Standard diplomatic protocol requires notification of military movements in neutral space. Prince Vexthor's laugh was harsh and dismissive. The council had their chance to address the human situation through diplomatic channels. Instead, they chose to issue warnings and worry about theoretical threats. The Dominion will handle this matter through practical demonstration. General Korthvan saluted with crisp military precision. When do you want us to depart, my prince? Immediately. The longer we delay, the more time the humans have to strengthen their defenses or request assistance from other powers. Strike quickly, establish our authority clearly, and return with proof that the elders' warnings were unnecessary. The War Council dispersed to begin preparations, each officer confident in their mission success. The Crimson Dominion had never failed to achieve its military objectives. Their technology was superior, their tactics proven, their resolve absolute. A handful of primitive human colonists would provide no meaningful challenge to forces that had conquered established galactic civilizations. But as Prince Vexthor remained alone on the observation deck, watching the Crimson Nebula shift through its eternal patterns, a small doubt nagged at his consciousness. The elders had seemed genuinely concerned rather than merely cautious. Their warning had carried an urgency that suggested real knowledge rather than theoretical speculation. He dismissed the doubt as quickly as it formed. The elders had grown soft in their ancient age, seeing threats in every shadow and danger in every change. The Crimson Dominion had built its empire through decisive action, not endless deliberation. If the humans posed any real threat to galactic stability, it was better to address the threat now, while they remained weak, rather than later when they might have grown stronger. Besides, he reasoned, even if the humans proved more capable than intelligence suggested, the demonstration would still serve its purpose. Other species watching the encounter would understand that the Dominion remained the galaxy's primary military power. Any civilization contemplating challenging established order would think twice after seeing how quickly and efficiently human resistance was overcome. 3 days later, General Korthvan's task force departed Dominion space toward the human colony at New Geneva. The Iron Vengeance was accompanied by the destroyers Swift Death and Crimson Blade, both veterans of successful campaigns against rebellious systems. Their crews were experienced warriors who had faced everything from desperate last stands to coordinated fleet actions. None of them had ever faced anything like humanity's response to provocation. As the Dominion ships traveled through hyperspace toward their target, automated monitoring stations throughout human space detected their approach and began transmitting alerts. But these were not standard military warnings. Instead, the human communication networks carried messages that would have puzzled any conventional military intelligence. Emergency broadcasts went out to every human colony, settlement, and starship, unknown hostile force approaching New Geneva. Colony population 53,000, including 8,000 children. All available assets respond immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Within hours, every human ship within 3 systems was altering course toward New Geneva. Not just military vessels, but merchant ships, research craft, passenger transports, and private yachts. Cargo holds were hastily converted to carry additional personnel. Civilian ships downloaded military software upgrades that had been prepared for exactly this type of emergency. The response was unprecedented in galactic history. An entire species mobilizing to defend a single remote colony, not because of strategic importance or military necessity, but simply because 53,000 humans were in danger. General Korthvan would have been amazed by the scale of the response if he had detected it. But Dominion military doctrine focused on identifying conventional military threats, organized fleets, defensive installations, strategic weapon systems. The scattered, improvised nature of humanity's response made it effectively invisible to standard tactical sensors. The Dominion task force would arrive at New Geneva expecting to face 200 lightly armed security personnel supported by 3 patrol craft. Instead, they would encounter something no military doctrine had prepared them to understand: an entire species that treated an attack on any human colony as an attack on every human everywhere. The galaxy was about to learn why the Elders had issued their warning. General Korthvan stood on the bridge of the Iron Vengeance as his task force dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. Before him stretched a scene of peaceful colonial development that perfectly matched intelligence reports. The main planet showed the scattered lights of agricultural settlements, orbital facilities for processing raw materials, and the gentle traffic patterns of civilian spacecraft moving between surface and space-based installations. Status report. He commanded, settling into the command throne that had been forged from the hull of his first conquered enemy vessel. Commander Yulkhan, his tactical officer, consulted the sensor displays with professional efficiency. System appears as expected, General. Primary colony world shows population concentrations matching intelligence estimates. Orbital infrastructure is minimal: basic communication relays, cargo transfer stations, and defensive platforms of primitive design. Enemy military assets: 3 patrol craft in standard defensive formation around the primary colony. Sensor profile suggests they're armed merchant vessels as intelligence predicted. Energy signatures indicate projectile weapons and basic chemical thrusters. No evidence of advanced military technology. General Korthvan nodded with satisfaction. The humans had not reinforced their position since the Dominion's intelligence gathering, suggesting they remained unaware of the approaching demonstration. Communications. Open a channel to the colony leadership. Channel open, General. Korthvan's voice carried the authority of countless successful conquests as he delivered his prepared message. This is General Korthvan of the Crimson Dominion Imperial Fleet. You are trespassing in space claimed by the Dominion. Remove your population and installations immediately, or pay tribute of 10,000 standard credits per month for continued occupation rights. The response came faster than he had expected, transmitted from the surface with surprising technological clarity. This is Governor Sarachun of New Geneva Colony. General, we were not aware that this system had been claimed by any galactic power. Our colonial charter was approved through standard galactic council procedures. Could you provide documentation of your claim for our legal review? Korthvan's scarred features twisted into a predatory smile. The human response was exactly what Dominion's psychological profiles had predicted: an attempt to delay through bureaucratic procedure while hoping the situation would resolve itself diplomatically. Governor Chun, the Crimson Dominion does not negotiate territorial claims with colonial squatters. You have 1 standard hour to begin evacuation procedures or transfer the required tribute. After that time, we will enforce Dominion authority through military action. There was a pause before Governor Chun responded, her voice remaining surprisingly calm despite the obvious threat. General, I need to consult with our colonial council and contact our home government. Could we request an extension of the deadline to allow for proper diplomatic consideration? Denied. Korthvan replied immediately. 1 hour, Governor. Choose wisely. He cut the communication channel and turned to his tactical officer. Begin scanning for any signs of military preparation. If they attempt to strengthen their defenses or call for reinforcement, we will accelerate our timeline. Commander Yulkon activated deep sensor sweeps of the system. General, I am detecting increased communication traffic between the colony and external sources, but nothing that suggests military mobilization. Energy patterns from their orbital facilities remain consistent with civilian operations. What the Dominion sensors could not detect was the true nature of those communications. Throughout human space, an emergency network was coordinating a response that defied every principle of conventional military doctrine. Admiral Sarah Martinez, commander of the small human fleet, was simultaneously coordinating with merchant captains, research vessel crews, and private ship owners to organize a rescue mission on an unprecedented scale. How many ships can we get to New Geneva within 6 hours? She asked her staff, gathered in the emergency command center on Luna. Captain Rodriguez consulted the rapidly updating displays. Military vessels, 12 destroyer-class ships, and, for cruisers, plus the Independence. But, Admiral, civilian shipping is responding in ways we've never seen before. Every human ship within 3 systems is volunteering for evacuation or combat support. Civilian ships won't survive combat with Dominion military technology, Admiral Martinez pointed out grimly. They know that, Commander Park replied, studying the communication logs. But they're coming anyway. Captain Williams of the Merchant Vessel Free Trade just transmitted, "No one threatens our people." The passenger liner New Horizon is downloading military coordination software as we speak. Even the research ship Discovery has requested weapons specifications. Admiral Martinez felt the familiar weight of command decisions that would affect thousands of lives. Standard military doctrine suggested that defending a remote colony against superior forces was strategically unsound. The logical choice was negotiated withdrawal, saving lives, and resources for more favorable engagements. But human psychology did not always follow logical parameters. "What's the civilian response on the colony itself?" she asked. Captain Rodriguez's expression was grim. Governor Chan reports that evacuation was offered to all non-essential personnel. 17,000 people requested transport off-world. 36,000 refused to leave. They're organizing civilian defense forces and converting industrial equipment to military purposes. The numbers told a story that no alien military analyst would understand. Humans faced with overwhelming odds did not simply calculate survival probabilities and choose the logical response. Instead, they made emotional decisions based on principles that transcended individual welfare. "Admiral," Commander Park said quietly, "the Dominion force consists of 3 ships with enough firepower to devastate the entire colony. Even with our full fleet, we would be significantly outgunned." "I know," Martinez replied, "but we're not abandoning 53,000 civilians to alien occupation. Begin immediate fleet deployment to New Geneva. All available ships, military and civilian. Coordinate with colony defenses for evacuation of non-combatants and support of resistance operations." Meanwhile, on the surface of New Geneva, the colony was transforming itself with the efficiency that had allowed humans to establish successful settlements across a dozen worlds. Governor Chan stood in the emergency command center, watching displays that showed the frantic but organized preparation taking place across the colony. "What's our actual defensive capability?" she asked Security Chief Jackson, a former military officer who had retired to colonial life but retained his tactical expertise. "Honestly, against Dominion military technology, we have essentially no defensive capability," Jackson replied bluntly. "Our patrol craft are armed merchant vessels. Our ground weapons are designed for security operations, not military combat. Our orbital platforms couldn't stop a determined pirate raid, much less a military assault." Governor Chun studied the tactical displays showing the 3 Dominion ships maintaining position at the edge of their system. "Then, why are 36,000 people refusing evacuation?" Chief Jackson's smile was grim but proud. "Because they're human, Governor. Because this is their home, and they built it with their own hands. Because the idea of alien invaders telling them where they can and cannot live makes them angry enough to fight hopeless battles. And because," added Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the colony's chief scientist, "we've been analyzing Dominion technology since first contact. Their military superiority depends on conventional tactics and overwhelming technological advantage. But humans have never been particularly conventional." Governor Chin looked at the scientist with interest. "Explain." The Dominion expects us to respond like every other species they've conquered. Either submit immediately or organize conventional military resistance that they can defeat through superior firepower. They don't understand that humans will try completely unexpected approaches. Chief Jackson nodded thoughtfully. What do you have in mind, Doc? Dr. Warren activated a display showing the colony's industrial facilities. We can't match their military technology, but we can make their occupation impossible. Industrial sabotage, communication disruption, coordinated civilian resistance. Make it cost more to hold this colony than it's worth to their empire. That assumes they want to occupy the colony, Governor Chin pointed out. What if they just decide to destroy it as an example to other human settlements? Then, we make sure the cost of that destruction is high enough to discourage similar actions elsewhere. Chief Jackson replied grimly. Every alien casualty, every damaged ship, every hour of resistance sends a message to the rest of the galaxy that attacking human colonies comes with consequences. As the hour deadline approached, General Korthvan prepared for what he expected to be a routine demonstration of Dominion military superiority. His ships had moved into optimal bombardment positions around the colony world. His troops were prepared for quick landing operations to secure key facilities. His communication systems were ready to broadcast the colony's surrender to appropriate galactic authorities. Status of colonial defenses? He inquired. Commander Yulkon consulted updated sensor readings. No significant changes, General. The 3 patrol craft have moved to defensive positions around the primary orbital facilities, but they remain severely outgunned. Ground-based energy signatures suggest some industrial activity, but nothing that appears militarily significant. And their response to our ultimatum? No official communication since the initial contact, General. However, we are detecting increased civilian traffic between surface and orbital facilities. Appears to be standard evacuation procedures. General Korthvan's satisfaction was complete. The humans were responding exactly as psychological profiles had predicted, attempting to save lives while preparing for inevitable surrender. Within hours, he would be reporting to Prince Vexthor that the human threat had been neutralized through a simple demonstration of superior force. Open communications to the colony, he ordered as the deadline expired. Governor Chun, your hour has elapsed. What is your decision? Governor Chin's response carried the calm determination that had enabled humans to establish successful colonies in hostile environments across known space. General Korthvan, we have consulted with our legal advisors, our colonial council, and our home government. New Geneva Colony rejects your claim to this system and refuses to pay tribute to an occupying force. We invoke our rights under Galactic Council law to defend our legitimate territorial holdings. The response surprised Korthvan with its directness. He had expected continued attempts at negotiation or pleading for mercy. Instead, the humans were choosing to resist despite their obvious military inferiority. Governor, you are making an unfortunate decision. My ships carry enough firepower to devastate your entire colony. Surrender now, and your people will be treated fairly under Dominion occupation law. General, Governor Chin replied, humanity has never surrendered to bullies, whether they come from our own world or from across the galaxy. New Geneva Colony will resist your occupation with every resource at our disposal. General Korthvan's anger flared at the casual dismissal of Dominion military might. These primitive mammals dared to call the greatest military force in the galaxy bullies. He would demonstrate the cost of such disrespect. Very well, Governor. You have chosen the consequences of your defiance. He closed the communication channel and turned to his tactical officer. Target the orbital defense platforms. Demonstrate our firepower with minimum civilian casualties. Once they understand our capabilities, they will reconsider their resistance. Target acquired, General. Plasma cannons ready to fire. Fire. The Iron Vengeance's main batteries spoke with the voice of advanced military technology, sending streams of superheated plasma across space toward the primitive orbital platforms defending New Geneva. The energy beams struck their targets with devastating accuracy, reducing the defensive installations to expanding clouds of vaporized metal and ceramic. Direct hits, General. All orbital platforms destroyed. General Korthvan nodded with satisfaction. The demonstration should make human military inferiority unmistakably clear. Open communications to the colony. But before he could deliver his follow-up ultimatum, Commander Yulkon's voice carried a note of confusion that cut through his confidence. General, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures approaching the system. Multiple contacts, incoming fast. Korthvan spun toward the tactical displays. His military instincts immediately alert to potential threats. Details, Commander. How many ships? Sir, I count 47 distinct hyperspace signatures. Mixed classifications. Some appear to be military vessels, but many are showing civilian configurations. ETA to system entry. Approximately 15 minutes. For the first time since arriving at New Geneva, General Korthvan felt the cold touch of tactical uncertainty. 47 ships represented a response far beyond anything intelligence had suggested the humans could mount. And civilian ships approaching a combat zone defied every principle of rational behavior. Communications, give me Prince Vexthor immediately. Priority override. As his communication officer worked to establish contact with Dominion Command, General Korthvan stared at the tactical displays, showing an approaching fleet that should not exist. The humans were not responding to his demonstration with surrender or negotiation. Instead, they were escalating to a level that made no strategic sense. For the first time, he began to understand why the elders had issued their warning. Admiral Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the Independence as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. Around her flagship, 46 other ships materialized from the twisted dimensions of faster-than-light travel. An armada that had assembled in less than 6 hours through coordination that defied every established principle of military logistics. Military vessels formed the core of the response. 12 destroyers whose crews had trained for exactly this type of colonial defense operation, for heavy cruisers that represented the bulk of humanity's deep space combat capability, and the Independence itself, humanity's only true battleship, a vessel that had been designed not for conquest, but for the protection of human settlements across the expanding frontier. But the military ships were outnumbered by civilian vessels that had no business approaching a combat zone. The passenger liner New Horizon, hastily retrofitted with emergency weapon systems and carrying 2,000 volunteers. The heavy cargo hauler Free Trade, its cargo bays converted to carry additional fighters and support craft. Research vessel Discovery, equipped with sensors that could analyze alien technology in real time. Private yachts, mining ships, colonial transport vessels. Every human ship that could reach New Geneva had answered the emergency call. Admiral, Captain Rodriguez reported from the tactical station, all ships report ready for operations. Civilian vessels are maintaining assigned positions in the outer engagement zone. Admiral Martinez studied the tactical displays showing the 3 Dominion ships in optimal bombardment positions around New Geneva. Her strategic training told her that the human fleet was still outgunned by the alien warships, whose advanced technology provided significant advantages in both offensive and defensive capabilities. But her human instincts told her that technological superiority meant nothing if her people were willing to pay any price to protect their own. Communications. Open a channel to the Dominion commander. Channel open, Admiral. Martinez's voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 20 years protecting human settlements from pirates, hostile environments, and, now, alien threats. This is Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You are threatening civilian populations under my protection. Withdraw from this system immediately or face the consequences. The response came quickly, transmitted from the alien flagship with obvious technological superiority. The voice carried arrogance and barely controlled anger. Admiral Martinez, I am General Korthvan of the Crimson Dominion Imperial Fleet. You are interfering with legitimate Dominion territorial enforcement operations. Withdraw your forces immediately or face destruction. General, this system was legally settled under Galactic Council protocols. No territorial claims exist that supersede colonial rights. You have attacked civilian installations without provocation. That makes you pirates, and I have standing orders to deal with pirates accordingly. Admiral Martinez closed the channel before Korthvan could respond, turning to her staff with grim determination. The talking is over. All ships, prepare for combat operations. Remember, our primary objective is protecting the civilian population on New Geneva. Everything else is secondary. On the surface of New Geneva, Governor Chun watched the tactical displays in the Emergency Command Center as the human fleet spread across local space in formation patterns that maximize their defensive capabilities while providing multiple evacuation routes for civilian shipping. The sight of 47 human ships willing to fight impossible odds for a remote colony sent a surge of fierce pride through every colonist who had chosen to remain and defend their home. "What are our ground-based options?" she asked Chief Jackson, who was coordinating with Fleet Tactical Command through quantum-encrypted communication links. "Admiral Martinez wants us to prepare for evacuation of all non-essential personnel," Jackson replied. "But she also understands that many colonists will refuse to leave even under direct bombardment." "How many are we talking about?" Dr. Warren consulted the latest population surveys. Current estimates suggest that approximately 28,000 colonists will refuse evacuation under any circumstances. They're organizing into civilian defense units and converting industrial facilities to support military operations. Governor Chun stared at the numbers with a mixture of admiration and horror. More than half the colony's population was choosing to face alien military technology rather than abandon their homes. And our actual defensive capabilities? Chief Jackson's expression was grimly realistic. On the ground, we have small arms, improvised explosives, and industrial equipment converted to defensive purposes. Against Dominion ground forces, we might be able to maintain guerrilla resistance for weeks or months. Against orbital bombardment, we have no meaningful defense. Then, why are people staying? Because they're human, Dr. Warren said simply. Because surrender to alien occupation violates something fundamental in human psychology. Because they would rather die fighting for their homes than live safely somewhere else. In space above New Geneva, General Korthvan was discovering that human naval tactics were as unpredictable as their colonial psychology. The approaching fleet was not arranging itself in conventional battle formation. Instead, human ships were spreading throughout the system in patterns that made coordinated engagement difficult while maximizing their ability to protect civilian evacuation routes. Analysis of enemy fleet composition, he demanded from Commander Yulkhan. "General, this force includes significant numbers of civilian vessels operating in support roles. Many appear to be armed merchant ships with improvised weapon systems. Military vessels show advanced sensor arrays and coordinated movement, but their technology remains inferior to Dominion standards." Estimated combat effectiveness. Commander Yulkhan hesitated, his tactical analysis producing results that contradicted standard military doctrine. "General, their individual ships are outclassed by our technology, but their coordination and tactical deployment suggest capabilities that exceed the sum of their parts. They appear to be treating this engagement as a rescue operation rather than a territorial dispute." Korthvan studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. The humans were not behaving according to established military protocols. Instead of concentrating their forces for maximum combat effectiveness, they were distributing their ships in defensive patterns that prioritized civilian protection over tactical advantage. Communications, contact Prince Vexthor. Emergency priority. The delay seemed eternal before Prince Vexthor's image appeared on the communication screen, transmitted across interstellar distances through quantum-encrypted channels. "General Korthvan, report your status." "My prince, the situation has escalated beyond initial parameters. Human response includes 47 ships, many of them civilian vessels operating in support of military operations. They are refusing our territorial claims and demanding our withdrawal." Prince Vexthor's scarred features showed no concern. 47 primitive ships against 3 Dominion warships? "General, your forces maintain overwhelming technological superiority. Destroy enough of their vessels to demonstrate the futility of resistance. Then, accept their surrender." "My prince, their tactical deployment suggests they're not primarily concerned with winning a military engagement. They appear to be prioritizing civilian evacuation and defensive operations. Standard victory conditions may not apply." The prince's expression hardened. "General, the Crimson Dominion does not negotiate with inferior species. You have my authorization to use whatever force is necessary to establish Dominion authority in that system, destroy their military capability, and demonstrate the cost of challenging our territorial claims." The communication ended, leaving General Korthvan alone with tactical decisions that would determine the fate of thousands of sentient beings. His military training demanded decisive action to achieve strategic objectives. His experience suggested that overwhelming force would quickly end human resistance. But something about the human response pattern made him uncomfortable with conventional approaches. Commander, target the largest human military vessel. Demonstrate our capabilities with a precision strike. Target acquired. General, the vessel identifies as the Independence, flagged as their fleet command ship. Fire when ready. The Iron Vengeance's plasma cannons spoke with devastating accuracy, sending superheated energy beams across space toward the human flagship. But instead of impact and destruction, the Dominion crew watched in amazement as multiple human ships moved to intercept the incoming fire, their overlapping defensive fields absorbing energy that should have vaporized the target vessel. What happened? Court fundamented. Commander Yulkon studied sensor readings with obvious confusion. General, multiple human vessels moved to defend their flagship using coordinated defensive screens. The energy was dispersed across several targets instead of destroying a single ship. Casualties: 2 human destroyers show significant damage, but remain operational. Their flagship is undamaged. General Korthvan stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. The humans had sacrificed tactical positioning and defensive capability to protect their command vessel, accepting damage to multiple ships rather than losing their fleet commander. It was militarily illogical, but strategically effective. Analysis of their defensive coordination. Sir, they appear to be sharing defensive systems across multiple vessels in real time. Their fleet is operating as a single coordinated unit rather than individual ships. When we target one vessel, others move to provide protection. The implications were staggering. Conventional military doctrine assumed that each ship would prioritize its own survival while contributing to overall mission objectives. The humans were prioritizing fleet survival, while individual vessels accepted damage or destruction to protect the whole. Communications from the human flagship, his communication officer reported. Admiral Martinez's voice carried grim satisfaction as she addressed the Dominion commander. General Korthvan, you just demonstrated why the galaxy should fear human military doctrine. We don't fight as individuals. We fight as one species with a single goal: protecting our own people. Every shot you fire at one human ship will be answered by 46 others. Admiral, Korthvan replied, struggling to maintain tactical confidence. Your fleet cannot match Dominion firepower. Surrender now, and your people will be treated according to standard occupation protocols. General, you don't understand what you're facing. This isn't a military engagement between 2 fleets. This is 47 crews of humans who are personally angry that you threatened their friends, their families, and their homes. We didn't come here to win a battle. We came here to make sure you regret starting one. The communication ended, leaving General Korthvan with a growing realization that he was facing something unprecedented in his military experience. The humans were not following rational tactical doctrine. They were operating according to emotional imperatives that made their responses impossible to predict using conventional strategic analysis. All ships, prepare for coordinated assault, he ordered. Target multiple human vessels simultaneously to prevent their defensive coordination. But as Dominion weapons powered up for concentrated attack, human ships spread throughout the New Geneva system began implementing tactical maneuvers that defied every principle of space warfare. Instead of concentrating their forces or retreating to defensive positions, they launched what could only be described as a coordinated rescue operation under fire. Civilian vessels moved toward the colony world to begin emergency evacuation of non-essential personnel, while military ships engaged in hidden, run attacks designed not to destroy Dominion vessels, but to disrupt their ability to target civilian populations. Cargo haulers converted their storage bays to emergency medical facilities. Research vessels used their advanced sensors to coordinate real-time tactical intelligence across the entire fleet. Most disturbing of all, human ships damaged in the fighting did not retreat for repairs. Instead, they continued operating until their systems failed completely, their crews transferring to other vessels to continue the fight. General Korthvan was discovering that fighting humans was like trying to defeat an entire species rather than a military force. Every tactical success created new complications. Every destroyed human ship seemed to make the remaining vessels more determined rather than more cautious. For the first time in his military career, he began to question whether victory was possible against opponents who treated every battle as a personal insult to their entire civilization. The battle for New Geneva raged for 18 hours, and by its end, the galaxy would understand why the Elders had issued their warning. What had begun as a simple demonstration of Dominion superiority had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic military history. A conflict where the losing side's defeat became more terrifying than their victory could have been. Admiral Martinez stood on the bridge of the Independence, her flagship now scarred by plasma burns and structural damage that should have forced any rational commander to withdraw. Around her, the surviving human fleet maintained defensive positions around New Geneva despite losses that would have broken the morale of any conventional military force. 7 ships destroyed completely, 15 more damaged beyond normal combat effectiveness, and nearly 3,000 casualties among crews that had volunteered for what everyone knew was a desperate mission. But the human fleet had not retreated. Instead, damaged vessels continued operating until their systems failed completely. Crews from destroyed ships transferred to other vessels and continued fighting. Civilian cargo haulers had been converted to makeshift warships, their crews learning military tactics through combat experience that no training program could simulate. Status of Dominion forces? Martinez asked her tactical officer, Captain Rodriguez, whose left arm was immobilized from injuries sustained when their bridge had taken a direct hit 6 hours earlier. Admiral, the Dominion flagship shows significant battle damage, but remains operational. Their escort vessels have withdrawn to defensive positions after we destroyed their forward weapon arrays. They're maintaining orbital bombardment capability, but their ground assault forces have been neutralized. Admiral Martinez studied the tactical displays that showed the current state of the engagement. By any rational military analysis, the Dominion fleet retained superiority in terms of raw firepower and defensive capability. But rational military analysis had proven inadequate for understanding human tactical responses to provocation. What's the situation on New Geneva? Commander Park, coordinating with colonial ground forces through quantum-encrypted channels, despite the communication disruption caused by ongoing combat, provided an update that perfectly captured the human response to overwhelming odds. Admiral, Governor Chun reports that 24,000 civilians have been successfully evacuated to emergency transports. 29,000 colonists refused evacuation and are maintaining organized resistance against Dominion ground operations. Casualties? Approximately 800 civilian casualties from orbital bombardment, but Dominion ground forces have been unable to establish secure control over any major colonial installations. Civilian resistance is using industrial equipment, improvised explosives, and coordination tactics that are proving effective against conventional occupation forces. Admiral Martinez felt a familiar mixture of pride and horror that characterized command decisions during desperate military operations. The colonists were paying a terrible price for their resistance, but their refusal to submit was demonstrating to the galaxy that attacking human settlements came with consequences that extended far beyond military calculations. Communications. Open a channel to the Dominion commander. General Korthvan's image appeared on the main screen, his scarred features showing the strain of 18 hours of combat that had challenged every assumption of his military career. Behind him, the bridge of the Iron Vengeance displayed damage indicators and casualty reports that reflected the cost of fighting opponents who treated every engagement as a personal assault on their species. General, Admiral Martinez began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had sacrificed everything to protect civilian populations. You have a choice to make. You can continue this engagement and face the consequences of human displeasure, or you can withdraw your forces and report to your superiors that the cost of occupying human colonies exceeds any possible benefit. Korthvan's response reflected his growing understanding that conventional military doctrine provided no guidance for the situation he faced. Admiral, my forces retain sufficient firepower to devastate your remaining ships and complete the occupation of this colony. Your resistance, while admirable, cannot change the ultimate outcome of this engagement. General, you're thinking like a conventional military commander fighting a conventional war. But this isn't a war between two fleets over territorial control. This is 47 crews of humans who are personally offended that you threaten people they care about. We're not trying to win a military victory. We're trying to make sure that every species in the galaxy understands what happens when you attack human civilians. Admiral Martinez gestured to displays showing the current state of both fleets. Look at the tactical situation, General. You have superior firepower and advanced technology. You could probably destroy every human ship in this system. But you can't do it without sustaining losses that will cripple your task force. And even if you achieve complete military victory, every species in the galaxy will know that humans were willing to die fighting rather than submit to occupation. She leaned forward, her expression showing the determination that had enabled humans to establish successful colonies in hostile environments across known space. More importantly, General, every human in the galaxy will know that the Crimson Dominion attacked New Geneva, and humans have long memories when it comes to people who threaten their families. The implications of her words were beginning to penetrate Korth Van's tactical consciousness. The battle for New Geneva was not occurring in isolation. Throughout human space, other colonies and settlements were undoubtedly receiving detailed reports of the engagement. The response patterns that had brought 47 ships to defend a remote colony suggested organizational capabilities that could mobilize human civilization for much larger conflicts. Are you threatening the Crimson Dominion, Admiral? General, I'm explaining the consequences of your actions. You came here expecting to face 200 lightly armed security personnel. Instead, you're fighting an entire species that treats attacks on any human settlement as attacks on all human settlements. This engagement has already demonstrated to the galaxy that occupying human colonies requires a level of military commitment that exceeds any rational cost-benefit analysis. Admiral Martinez activated displays showing the approaching hyperspace signatures that her long-range sensors had detected over the past several hours. But, more importantly, General, you need to understand that this battle is being watched by observers from across the galaxy. The hegemony border worlds are monitoring the engagement to assess human military capabilities. The Bendari Research Collective is analyzing our tactical responses for scientific study. Even the Galactic Council has dispatched observation vessels to document the proceedings. The tactical displays showed more than 30 additional ships maintaining position at the edge of the New Geneva system. Vessels from a dozen different galactic civilizations that had come to observe humanity's first major military engagement with an established galactic power. The battle was becoming a demonstration not just of human military capabilities, but of human responses to provocation. Every species in the galaxy is learning the same lesson, Admiral Martinez continued. Humans do not respond to military threats according to conventional parameters. We do not calculate acceptable losses and choose the most efficient path to survival. When threatened, we become personally angry and respond with levels of violence that exceed rational tactical considerations. General Korth Van was discovering that Admiral Martinez's assessment was uncomfortably accurate. 18 hours of combat had demonstrated that humans treated military engagements as personal conflicts rather than strategic operations. They accepted casualties that should have broken their morale. They continued fighting with damaged equipment that conventional forces would have considered unusable. They coordinated their responses across multiple ships with an efficiency that suggested unconscious unity rather than military training. Most disturbing of all, every tactical success against human forces seemed to increase rather than decrease their determination to continue fighting. General, Admiral Martinez said, her voice carrying the weight of command decisions that affected thousands of lives. You can probably complete your military objectives here. You can destroy our remaining ships, occupy the colony, and claim this system for the Crimson Dominion. But the cost of that victory will exceed any possible benefit to your empire. Explain. Because 30 different galactic civilizations are watching this engagement, and learning that attacking human settlements requires a level of military commitment that no rational empire would accept for territorial expansion. Because every human in the galaxy will remember that the Crimson Dominion attacked New Geneva, and humans hold grudges across generations. Because your victory here will start a conflict between your empire and humanity that will only end when one of our species is extinct. The truth of her assessment was reflected in the tactical displays surrounding both fleets. The battle for New Geneva had become a demonstration of human psychological responses to military provocation, and that demonstration was being observed by representatives from across the galactic community. General Korth Van made the decision that would define the remainder of his military career. Admiral, the Crimson Dominion is prepared to withdraw our territorial claims to this system in exchange for cessation of hostilities and diplomatic resolution of our boundary disputes. Admiral Martinez's response carried relief, tinged with grim satisfaction. General, Humanity accepts your withdrawal and looks forward to peaceful resolution of any legitimate territorial concerns through standard Galactic Council procedures. As the Dominion fleet began its withdrawal from New Geneva, observers from across the galaxy transmitted their reports back to their home governments. The message was consistent across 30 different civilizations. Humans respond to military provocation with levels of violence and determination that exceed rational cost-benefit analysis. 3 days later, Prince Vexthor stood again on the observation deck of his flagship, but now his view was colored by tactical reports that challenged every assumption of Dominion military superiority. General Korthvan's task force had returned from New Geneva with casualties, damage, and the knowledge that humanity represented a type of opponent that no existing military doctrine could address effectively. Status of human expansion activities? He asked his intelligence officer. My prince, human colonial development has accelerated significantly since the New Geneva engagement. They have established new defensive installations throughout their border regions and begun coordinating fleet movements across multiple star systems. More concerning, their diplomatic outreach to other species has increased dramatically. Prince Vexthor studied intelligence reports that painted a picture of human responses to provocation that validated the Elder's warning. Explain the diplomatic developments. Several minor galactic powers that previously maintained neutral relationships with humanity have signed mutual defense agreements. The Bendari Research Collective has begun sharing advanced scientific information with human settlements. Even the hegemony border worlds have initiated trade relationships that include military technology transfers. The implications were clear. Humanity's response to Dominion provocation had demonstrated to the galaxy that humans were willing to sacrifice everything to protect their own people. That demonstration had attracted the attention and respect of other species who valued such loyalty and determination. Assessment of current human military capabilities? The intelligence officer's report reflected careful analysis of data gathered during and after the New Geneva engagement. My prince, human individual ship technology remains inferior to Dominion standards, but their coordination and tactical flexibility have proven remarkably effective. More importantly, their psychological responses to military threats create operational challenges that exceed pure technological considerations. Prince Vexthor dismissed his staff and remained alone on the observation deck, contemplating the swirling crimson nebula that had hidden his ancestors during their rise to galactic power. The Elder's warning had proven accurate. Humans did not follow predictable behavioral patterns. They responded to provocation with determination that exceeded rational strategic calculations. But, perhaps most troubling of all, the galaxy was learning to respect that determination rather than dismiss it as primitive irrationality. Across the galaxy, in the ancient chambers where the Elders maintained their eternal vigil over galactic civilization, 3 beings older than recorded history contemplated the reports from New Geneva with satisfaction tinged by concern. Elder Vorthak's voice resonated through crystalline communication networks that spanned light years. The demonstration is complete. Humanity's response to provocation has been documented by representatives from 30 galactic civilizations. The warning has been validated. The Ancient One of Kepler, 442b, shifted through prismatic colors that reflected deep thought. But the lesson learned may not be the lesson we intended. Several species have interpreted human responses to provocation as strength rather than danger. The Ethereal Collective's spokesman materialized in the chamber, its energy patterns reflecting careful consideration of implications that extended across galactic timescales. Perhaps that is for the best. Humans will either unite the galaxy through example or destroy it through conflict. Either outcome will be more interesting than the current stagnation. Elder Vorthak's ancient consciousness contemplated futures that stretched across millions of years. Indeed, we have issued our warning. Now we observe the consequences as they unfold across galactic history. The galaxy had learned its lesson about provoking humans. The question that remained was whether that lesson would lead to unprecedented cooperation or unprecedented conflict between species that view the universe through fundamentally different philosophical frameworks. Only time would tell which path the galaxy would choose.